Wesley's POV.
Soft fingertips tracing along the skin of my chest and my left arm pulled me from my deep, restful slumber. I blinked the sleep from my eyes and found the tent filled with a soft gray light. My little ballerina was laying next to me, still safe and comfortable in the circle of my arms, and I pulled her in closer to me. Her body melted into mine, relaxing against every inch of me, her subtle curves a perfect fit with my muscles and strength. "What time is it?" I grumbled, my voice scratchy and my lips brushing against the skin of Haven's forehead. She somehow moved her body even closer to mine, seeking either my warmth or comfort or my scent, or maybe all three, so I curled myself even more around her, tucking the sleeping bag up higher so she wouldn't get cold. "I don't know," she replied, her voice raspy too. "My phone died." I grunted, then peeked out of one eye to look for the bag of our stuff. "We'll charge it on our way home," I added as I reached for the bag and pulled it closer to us, then rummaged around in it for my watch. "Sugar plum. It's not even 5 a.m., I groaned, tossing my watch back into the bag and snuggling back down into the pillow with my arms back around her and my eyes closed. "Go back to sleep." "I was trying to," she mumbled, pressing her cheek into my chest. "By tickling my bicep?" I asked, my lips twitching into a half smile. She chuckled, and then I felt her lips kissing the spot on my bicep where her fingers had been tracing when I woke up. "I was looking at your tattoo," she whispered as she settled back into my chest. I hummed, my hands rubbing her back. "The one of the lake?" I felt her head nodding, and I smiled fully. "It's beautiful," she muttered, her voice getting softer. "The trees, the water, it looks just like it did the night we first saw each other." I pictured the tattoo in my mind as she spoke, the one I had gotten on my 18th birthday, seeing the trees around the lake and the moon on the water, and I realized she was right. "It does, doesn't it?" I replied, but her breathing was back to that deep, easy rhythm from the night before, and I knew she had drifted back to sleep. My hands kept rubbing up and down her back, going lower with each pass, until I reached her tight little ass and realized her lower half was still naked from my bedtime snack the night before. I groaned and moved my hands back to the middle of her back and left them there. My morning wood was already making itself known, and I didn't need to add fuel to the fire by crossing that line. The feel of her body in my arms, and the contentment that filled me at knowing she was with me and safe and warm, and the way her scent wrapped around me and mixed with mine lulled me back to sleep. When I woke up again, the sun was shining brightly, warming the space inside the tent. I was on my back, with Haven sprawled across my chest, her small body all the way on top of mine. I lifted my head a little to look down at her, and I smiled at how beautiful and peaceful she looked. I knew I would enjoy seeing this sight every morning if she decided to be mine. I laid my head back down and slung one arm behind my head, my thoughts drifting to the night before, to the heated moment between us when I almost lost the grip on my restraint. I had to tell her. I had to let her know the truth. Before we could continue, before we could take that next step and be together fully, I had to show her what I was. I was in love with her, and I knew she felt strongly for me, that she maybe even loved me back, and I couldn't let her love for me be built on lies. "What are you thinking so hard about, pal?" Haven said, interrupting my thoughts with her scratchy morning voice. Her hand reached up and massaged the crease between my eyebrows, and I laughed. "Just thinking about some things I need to do this week," I told her noncommittally, a plan already forming in my mind. Her eyes widened, and she pushed herself up to a sitting position, putting her naked pussy right on my stomach. "Oh shit, it's Monday," she exclaimed, jumping up and walking around the tent looking for her clothes, not even realizing what she was doing to me by being half naked like that with no thought about it. "Don't you have work? Will you be in trouble?" "I called my dad on our way here while you were asleep," I grumbled, my eyes following her bare ass around the tent. The shirt fell to her thighs, but from the angle I was at with her standing and me propped on an elbow, I had an almost unobstructed view of her lower half. She bent to pick up her underwear, and the glimpse of her pussy lips between her legs had my dick rock hard again in an instant. "Haven!" I snapped, falling back on the pillow and covering my eyes with my hands. "What?" she asked, and I uncovered my eyes just enough to glimpse her standing up straight and staring at me in confusion. "Are you intentionally trying to kill me?" I groaned. She glanced down at herself, and then her cheeks turned bright red as she realized she was giving me a little show. Like I didn't have my head between her legs the night before, or my mouth and my tongue on her pussy. She hunched over so the shirt covered her knees, and she slipped her underwear on as fast as lightning. Then she walked over to the bag by me, bending down to rummage through it for her clothes. I rolled onto my side and grabbed her around the waist, pulling her back onto the camping pad with me, and pulling the sleeping bag back up over our bodies. "What are you doing?" I rumbled out, holding her tightly so she couldn't escape. Not that she tried. She just wrapped her arms around my neck and snuggled into me. "I was going to get dressed," she replied. "So we can get ready to go home," she added. "There's no rush," I told her. "Just relax and enjoy your hard-earned little mini vacation." "You say there's no rush, but you haven't even checked the time since we woke up the first time," she giggled. I sighed. "That is true," I agreed, rolling a bit so I could grab my watch. "Oh, wow," I laughed. "It is 9 a.m., I told her, tossing the watch back in my bag. "Oops," she said, grimacing a little. "Sorry, I know you're usually an early riser," and I cut her off with a kiss. "I'm not mad, sugar plum," I said against her mouth. She smiled and kissed me back, her hands moving into my hair. I deepened the kiss, and just as I was about to slip my tongue into her mouth, my stomach growled, loud and long, letting Haven and probably the entire beach know how hungry I was. She pulled away with a laugh, her forehead pressing against my nose, and I just shook my head. "Well, while I'm not in any rush, my stomach apparently is," I said, and she laughed even more. I moved us both into a sitting position and grabbed my bag, then looked at her and said, "Don't get mad." "Why would I get mad?" I pulled out the shorts and the white California t-shirt I had bought for her at the beach shop while she was trying on her swimsuits, and she looked at them and then glared at me. "How do you know they're the right size?" she asked. "I called Maya," I muttered, not meeting her eyes. She stared at me with her jaw dropped, and I waited for the outburst, for the scolding and the complaining and the "I don't need you to buy things for me," but it never came. She just grabbed the clothes from me and stood from the pad, shoving her legs into the shorts. With only a cursory glance over her shoulder at me, she pulled my shirt over her head and tossed it unceremoniously to the floor, exposing her entire bare back to me. I held myself very still as she took her sweet-ass time pulling the new t-shirt on, examining it and searching for a tag, keeping her back to me the whole time. Her wild, mussed-up bedhead hair fell past her shoulders, and it moved and swayed with her motions, reminding me of dancing flames. When she finally pulled the shirt over her head, without a bra on, mind you, I stood up too, pulling my shorts and t-shirt on and sliding my feet into my new sandals. "You'll probably want to put your sweater on," I told her. "It can still be chilly in the mornings, plus the wind," I said, glancing pointedly at her chest and her hard nipples that were standing at attention under her t-shirt. Her breasts may have been small, but it was chilly and the shirt was white. But she just smiled at me and walked out of the tent, and I rushed after her, wrapping one arm around her waist and one around her shoulders and yanking her back against me. "Sugar plum," I scolded. "You cannot possibly think I'm going to let you walk around like this. Not after last night. Not after what you told me." "What did I tell you?" she asked, turning her head towards me. "That you're mine," I growled into her ear. Her throat bobbed, and her ass pushed back against my groin, rubbing against my erection and making my growl turn into a groan. "If I'm yours, does that mean you're mine?" Haven asked. Mylekin nodded his head in my mind enthusiastically, and I gave a low chuckle. 100% yes," I whispered, kissing her ear. "Now put on your sweater," I told her, stepping away from her so she could do as I said. "Bossy," she grumbled, but she walked back into the tent and pulled her sweater on without another word. The rest of our day passed by way too quickly. Time seemed to know that I wanted the day to last forever, and instead of granting my wish, it did the exact opposite. Before I knew it, we were pulling up to the curb in front of her apartment building. We'd spent a decent portion of the drive in silence, just holding hands and enjoying each other's presence. There was something so simple, so peaceful about being able to just sit in silence with her and have it not be awkward. Before, with any of the other girls I dated, I would have tried to come up with something to discuss, something to break the awkward moment, but with her, it was different. I didn't feel the need to fill the silence with small talk or fake niceties. I was content to just be with her. I put the truck in park and went around to her door, where she sat in her seat waiting patiently for me to open it for her. "You're learning, I see," I said to her as she hopped down to the sidewalk, my lips twitching. She just rolled her eyes and turned to grab her purse from the floor of the cab. I laughed and grabbed the small bag I had put her things in, then followed her into her building. "Hey, Maya," I said as we entered their apartment. She glanced up at me from where she sat in a dining nook, eating a salad, then wrinkled her nose a bit as her eyes slid to Haven. "Goddess, Wes, could you leave any more of your scent on her?" she mind-linked me. "I could," I retorted, smiling at her over Haven's head. "And you'll need to get used to it," I added. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Haven again. "But her birthday isn't until—" "Either way," I said. "As long as she wants it, too." Her eyes sparkled, and then she said, "How was the beach?" "Wonderful," Haven said. "Except the water was fucking cold." Maya laughed, and Haven shook her head and went into her room to set her stuff down. I followed her and closed the door partially, setting the bag in my hand on the small pink chair in her room. "Was it really wonderful?" I asked, stepping up behind her at the foot of her bed. "Do you really have to ask that?" she muttered, looking at me over her shoulder. I just wrapped my arms around her waist and dipped my head into the crook of her neck, breathing in her scent as much as I could before I had to leave. I didn't want to. I didn't want to leave her. After spending a night with her in my arms, and knowing how that felt, I wanted that every night. Her hands rubbed my forearms and her head tilted to the side to give me better access to her neck. I did not know if it was an intentional action or not, but it had my leaking in a tizzy. I swallowed and kissed her neck lightly, then said, "I have to go." "I know," she replied. But neither of us moved. Neither of us made any effort to end our embrace so I could go home. "I want to make you dinner this week," I murmured against her shoulder. "At my house," I added. I felt a little shiver run through her body and smelled her arousal leaking into the space in her bedroom, and I had to hold back a groan. I was going to have to take care of myself as soon as I got home. Probably more than once, too. "I would like that," she answered, nudging me with her chin. I lifted my face and met her lips in a gentle kiss, taking care to not let it get carried away. I squeezed her waist as I pulled back, and she turned in my arms to face me and hug me. "I'll call you, okay?" She nodded and squeezed me back. I gave her one more kiss, then walked to her door and said, "See you later, Sugar Plum."
Haven's POV.
I stood on the front porch of Wesley's house and smoothed my hands over my dress as I waited for him to let me in. His little bungalow house was cute and well taken care of, painted a light green with a swing on one side of the porch. The whole overall look gave off a homey, clean vibe, making me feel comfortable and relaxing my nerves about this date night. I had a strong feeling about why he wanted to make dinner for me tonight. He'd held us off from going all the way at the beach because he said he wanted it to be romantic and special, even though I told him that wasn't necessary. Then he'd told me he wanted to make me dinner at his house, so I was crossing my fingers that the night would end with us in his bed. No pressure, right? I took in a deep breath and smoothed down the front of my green dress again. I had made sure to actually dress up for this date, since I hadn't the previous time. He didn't tell me to, but I wanted to. I wanted to look my fucking best for him. I wanted him to be unable to resist me. Which was why my dress had tiny, thread-like straps and a slit that went all the way to the top of my thigh. I had made other preparations as well, in the hopes that the night went the way I wanted. The door opened, and my eyes met the chocolate brown of Wesley's, his smile faltering for a moment as he looked me up and down. "Wow," he said once his eyes were back to being level with mine. I smiled at him, trying not to laugh at the dish towel he had thrown over his shoulder, or his dress-down outfit of the gray Stanford t-shirt I had worn at the beach and jeans. Or at his bare feet. "I didn't dress up this time because last time you didn't dress up, so I thought you would do the same again, and I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable, so I just wore jeans and a t-shirt instead, and..." I stepped into his house and grabbed him by his cheeks, pulling his face down and kissing him to stop his rambling. His hand came to my waist, resting there lightly as his other hand closed his front door behind me. Then he placed it in the small of my back, pushing me in closer to his body. "Hi," I breathed out as I broke our kiss. "Hi," he replied, smiling. "I missed you," I said before I could stop myself, and then my cheeks flushed, probably the brightest pink they'd ever been without makeup. I couldn't believe I'd said that. I always made fun of couples who said things like that. I never once missed Lennox or any other guy I'd dated when we were apart. "I missed you too," Wesley laughed, kissing me again and easing my self-consciousness. "Seriously, you look incredible," he told me. I smirked as I stepped back, setting my purse down on the little table in his entryway. I swayed side to side as I said, "I thought you said green wasn't my color." He looked confused for a moment, a little wrinkle forming between his eyebrows, then he threw his head back and laughed. "If it's a dress that looks like that, then it can be any color you want it to be," he said, his eyes scanning my body again, his gaze filled with more heat and desire than the first time. "Come on," he said finally, holding his hand out to me. "Dinner is almost ready." I took it and followed him through the house to the kitchen, my low-heeled sandals clicking on the dark hardwood flooring. "Do you need any help with anything?" I asked him, stopping at the edge of the counter as he continued to the stove. "No, everything is basically done." I nodded and glanced around the kitchen again, taking in the clean, white marble countertops and the white cabinetry and white backsplash and white walls. "It smells delicious," I said, inhaling deeply. "It's my mom's bolognese recipe, given to her by her mom, who got it from her mom, all the way back I don't even know how far," he chuckled. "I can't wait to try it." "Well, my mom's is better. I know that for a fact. But mine comes pretty close," he said as he pulled 2 plates out of the cabinets. "Did you want wine?" he asked, pausing with his hand on a glass and glancing back at me. "Sure," I breathed out, tearing my eyes away from his ass moving and tightening in his jeans as he reached for the dinnerware. "Just a small one, though, because I have to drive back to town tonight," I added, testing for his reaction. He nodded and swallowed, but said nothing else as he took 2 stemless wine glasses out and set them next to the plates. He poured us each a small glass of red wine, then turned to hand them both to me. "Can you take these to the table, please? I'll dish up our food and bring it over." I nodded and took them from him, maneuvering around his counter to his long, dark brown rectangular table in the dining area. I hesitated for a moment, then set his glass down at the head of the table, and then sat down on his left, taking a sip of my wine as I did. I let the full-bodied flavor of the wine fill my mouth and savored it before I swallowed the sip, just as Maya had taught me. Wes entered then, with our plates in each of his hands, loaded up with spaghetti, red sauce, garlic bread, and salad. "Wow," I said, as he set the plate in front of me and then took his own seat. "Seriously, this looks and smells fantastic," I told him. "Thank you, but please don't sing my praises just yet," he laughed. "You haven't even tasted it." I smiled and picked up my fork, twirling the pasta around the tines and blowing on it a little before I took a bite. He watched me intently, and I didn't miss him squirm slightly in his chair when I blew on the pasta. I took a slow bite and groaned out my delight at the hearty flavor of the meat sauce, pretending that I didn't see him bite his knuckles at the sound. But judging by the glare he was giving me when I lowered my fork, he knew I did it on purpose. "What? It's superb," I told him, feigning innocence. He replied, looking not at all convinced. "Did you make the pasta too?" I asked, poking at it with my fork. It looked very similar to the homemade pasta Maya made. He shook his head. "That I can't take credit for," he admitted, taking his own bite of food. "Sebastian made the spaghetti noodles. I never got the hang of the homemade pasta like he did. I stick to the bolognese." "So Sebi can make lovely bouquets and cook? That's so impressive." "Humph," he grunted, frowning and stabbing a piece of lettuce with his fork. I held in my laugh as I placed my hand on his forearm. "You're an excellent cook as well," I told him. And all of the flowers you gave me were beautiful. I leaned forward out of my chair and kissed his cheek, then went back to my meal. He seemed appeased by my words and my actions, and the rest of the meal passed by with us eating and laughing and talking about our days we'd spent apart since the beach. I still can't believe Reed didn't know who Tchaikovsky was, I chuckled. I had my legs crossed underneath me, my shoes discarded under the table. Wesley nodded, laughing too, his thumb rubbing my hand that he held on top of the table. I know. Nolan is still giving him a hard time for that one. I laughed again, then glanced at the clock in his kitchen, surprised that it was already after 9 p.m. Here, I said, standing and grabbing both of our dishes. Let me clean these before I go. I walked into the kitchen before he could say anything to stop me and felt him follow me. I turned on the sink and got the water hot, then worked at washing the dishes. Wesley put the leftover food away and handed me his pots and pans as he did, working in tandem with me as we cleaned his kitchen until his part was done and he leaned against the wall, just watching me. I saw it then, saw a glimpse of us doing this together, night after night, first alone, and then with little ones running around under our feet, and I nearly dropped the glass in my hand from the shock of that thought. A life. A future. A family. It was everything I'd always wanted, but was too afraid to let myself dream of after Jack had his stroke. I didn't want it with Lennox, because everything with him always felt forced. But it was different with Wesley. With him, I knew again that was exactly what I wanted, what he would give to me when I was ready. I turned the sink off and took in a deep breath, closing my eyes and squeezing my shaky hands before I dried them off. The heat of Wesley's body radiated into my back, and his hands worked their way from my hips to my thighs as he stepped up close behind me. He brushed my long hair over one shoulder, and his breath tickled the back of my neck as he leaned in to kiss my bare shoulder. My head tilted back, resting against his chest as his left hand slipped inside of the slit of my dress and then up my leg towards the spot I wanted him to touch the most. A strangled noise left his chest as his fingers found my naked pussy, and his other hand gripped hard into my thigh. His hips pressed forward, and his nose slid up my neck to my ear. "No panties?" he groaned, and I shuddered against him. "I must have forgotten them," I whispered. "Liar." He smirked. "Beautiful little liar." His lips met mine in a searing kiss, but he ended it before I could lose myself in it. I whimpered as he pulled away, and he said, "What are you trying to do to me?" He groaned again as I rubbed my ass against his hardening dick. I'd felt how hard he'd gotten during all our teasing and playing at the beach. I knew he'd likely rubbed one or more out after he dropped me off at home. Before I could do anything else, though, he had me turned around and up in his arms, his hands under my skirt and gripping into my bare ass. Our lips met again.
Wesley's POV.
Waking up a second morning with Haven in my arms was the best feeling in the world. Actually, make that the second best feeling in the world. Because the first best was the feel of my naked body curled around her naked body, snuggled deep into my comfy mattress together. I had never really been one for cuddling with my females when they'd stay the night. But then again, none of them had been Haven. It seemed everything I thought I knew about myself was completely wrong. Having her back in my life was like waking up, like realizing I had been dead without her. I lifted my head to kiss her shoulder, my lips drawing a line back and forth across her bare flesh. My hands roamed her smooth skin, skimming her hips and thighs with one while the other that was wrapped underneath her body squeezed her small breast, pinching her nipple between my fingers so it peeked out at me as I gazed down at her. Memories of the previous night flooded my mind as I continued my morning exploration of her responsive little body. I had not expected her to keep up with my stamina, but she was just as insatiable as me. "Morning," I said to her between my kiss attack. Good morning indeed," she replied, resting her head on my chest. I stroked her bare back with my hands, enjoying the feel of her skin and her body, my nose pressed into her soft hair. I wanted more mornings that started the same way. I wanted every morning to start that way. Her fingers danced across my chest with sleepy movements, her body and mind still waking up from sleep and coming down from the high we had just shared. I watched as her back rose and fell and her breathing returned to normal at the same time as mine. "We should have some breakfast," I said to her, even though the last thing I wanted was to leave my bed or my room. But our sex marathon had me famished, and I was sure she was getting hungry too. "Didn't you just have some?" Haven retorted as she lifted her head, and my jaw dropped in shock. She smirked at me and then hopped off of the bed, walking to my bathroom and stretching her arms over her head, giving me a wonderful view of her bare ass and the side of her breast as she smiled at me over her shoulder. I got up too, with some reluctance, and pulled a pair of sweatpants on before going into the spare bedroom where I knew Maddie had a stash of clothes that she thought I didn't know about. I grabbed leggings and a t-shirt, then went back into my room to find Haven already pulling my Stanford t-shirt on over her head. I sighed in disappointment as the fabric covered her gorgeous body from sight, but I was more than thrilled to have her choose to put my shirt on of her own volition. The way my scent lingered on her and in her after fucking her was wonderful, but not enough. And it wouldn't be enough until I could mark her, so her wearing my shirt was paramount in letting everyone know I'd claimed her. Especially if she hung out on the territory with me while I worked. Which is what I was going to ask her to do. I didn't want her to head home yet. Or ever, if I was honest. I tossed her the leggings, and she eyed them dubiously, her face in a cute little jealous frown. "They're Maddie's," I told her, and her face relaxed as she slipped her long ivory legs into them and pulled them up over her hips. I grabbed the hem of my shirt on her body and snapped her into me so I could kiss her one more time. Then I took her hand and led her out into the kitchen. She perched herself on a bar stool, her fingers combing through the ends of her fuzzy curls from our shower the night before. I ground some coffee beans and placed them in the filter, then got some water and filled the machine so I could start brewing our coffee. After I started the coffee, I picked my phone up off the charging station where it had sat all night, since I never grabbed it to bring it to my room. I furrowed my brow as I saw all the missed calls from Nolan, and the texts from both last night and this morning, the most recent of which read, "Call me ASAP." I held the phone up and looked at Haven. "I need to call Nolan," I told her. "I guess it's urgent." She nodded, and I dialed his number. "Where the fuck are you?" Nolan asked, answering immediately. "At my house," I answered. "Dude, what the fuck happened? You've had your mind link blocked since last night, and you weren't answering your phone." "I was with Haven," I told him, pulling 2 mugs out of my cabinets. "Well, yes, I figured as much, but you were supposed to link me when you were ready to tell her." I almost dropped the mugs onto the floor. "Shit," I muttered, glancing at her again. "Shit, I totally forgot." "Thinking with your dick, I see," Nolan snickered. "Shut up," I grunted, running my hand through my hair. I clenched my fist and brought it down slowly on the countertop, not wanting to scare Haven. This was bad. So bad. I had fucked up big time. The whole reason I had asked her to come have dinner at my house was so I could show her my leakin' and tell her the truth about what we were. I'd wanted to come clean to her before we took that step and had sex with each other. But seeing her in my kitchen, watching her clean up our dinner, and having her in my house with her scent filling every corner and looking as amazing as she did in that sexy as fuck dress had me all kinds of distracted. And then the discovery of her naked pussy under her dress had me forgetting everything and unintentionally throwing all my plans out the window. I looked at her once again, and she had her brows raised, confusion and worry playing across her face in equal measure. I knew I had to tell her, knew I needed to do it before we continued with our day. "Be at my house in 5, I told him, "and bring Rachel." I hung up the phone and set it down, then gripped the edge of the marble counters, breathing deeply to steady myself. I felt like I was going to be sick. I hadn't wanted to do it this way, because I knew if she wanted nothing to do with me after finding out the truth, it would be harder to let her go if I'd already slept with her. But it was too late, and I had fucked up, and I might lose her. Haven's delicate hands touched my back, caressing me and comforting me. "Is everything all right?" she asked me. "Yes." "No. I don't know," I replied, shaking my head, my chin dropping to my chest. "I need to tell you something," I mumbled. She swallowed and then said, "Okay. Can you come outside with me?" I asked, turning to look at her. "Of course," she answered, even though her brows furrowed. I walked towards the back door, my heart racing and pounding as I pulled it open and walked down the stairs to my backyard area. Haven was right behind me, hurrying her footsteps to keep up with my long strides. "We're in your driveway," Nolan linked me. I turned back to Haven and pulled her to me roughly, giving her a deep and desperate kiss. "I'm so sorry, Sugar Plum," I muttered, my hands pushing her hair back from her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I meant to tell you before, but..." "Tell me what?" she asked. "About what I really am," I mumbled. "What?" Just try not to freak out, okay?" "Too late." Haven giggled, trying to downplay her nervousness, her heart racing in her chest almost as fast as mine. I stepped away from her with a grim smile. Then I pulled my sweatpants down and shifted into my leakin.